Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Jolene's Happy Time Craftcast. I am very excited to welcome you to, would you believe this is our 37th episode or our 37th show? So that's really exciting. And thank you for what's been a really great, it's been a little over a year. And thank you so much for always being here and being supportive of what we're doing. So I know I say it every single time, and every single time it is true. Today's guest, you are going to love talking and listening to Jenn. Jenn and I were both published at the same time in Strawberry Moon magazine. And of course, you know, I absolutely love Strawberry Moon magazine and the publisher, Suzanne Early. She does such an amazing job. If you are not familiar with Strawberry Moon magazine, I will link it in our show notes so that it's easy for you to find. It's an art journaling magazine, and it's for anyone who has interest in art journaling, visual journaling, keeping a journal, junk journaling, whatever you want to call it. But it's full of ideas and inspiration and techniques. And Jenn and I happen to be published in episode or issue 7, I think it was, at the same time. And so you'll find her work and mine in that same issue of Strawberry Moon, but I'll link it so you can find it. But here's the thing about Jenn. So Jenn is a certified forest therapy guide, and she is, with the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy, and she's the founder of Living Canopy. She's grown up in Maine near Mount Katahdin, and she fell in love with nature. What Jenn Hoenig does is she helps people reconnect with the earth through forest therapy. She's an attorney who blends wellness into her field, and she loves camping with her husband, her family, and their pop-up camper, and they named their camper Jerry, which we got to talk about that. So I know you'll do a really good job of helping me welcome Jenn Hoenig to the Happy Time Craftcast. Here she is. Hey, Jenn.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it so much. Right off the bat, Jenn, I know people are wondering, what is forest therapy? I know this is probably like a really big question, but if you could like summarize it for us so we can better understand, I think that'd be a great place to start.
Cool. I agree. So some of your listeners may be familiar with forest bathing.
Yes.
Or it's a Japanese practice. Wicked ancient, goes back to the 1980s. So I guess the 1900s.
Okay.
And they call it Shinrin Yoku. And forest therapy was born out of the forest bathing movement.
Okay.
And in the 1980s, the Japanese government noticed a startling and disconcerting trend in their health of their population. They were noticing an increase in their population's risk of cancer and autoimmune diseases. So they took that next step and they sent their scientists, did a wide breadth to try to figure out what was going on. And what the science came back with was that when you're outside and you're amongst the plants provide certain chemicals. They just emit certain chemicals all of the time. And the plants use these chemicals to protect themselves from fungus or bacteria or viruses, anything that could kind of cause cellular abnormalities in the plant. Well, and one of these chemicals that I can use as an example are called phytoncides. And these chemicals, what the scientists found was we inhale them through our lungs, and we also kind of inhale them through our skin. And what these phytoncides do is they increase our white blood cell count, in particular, our NK1 cells or our natural killer cells. And those are the cells that go after cellular abnormalities in our own bodies and kill precancerous tumor cells and help regulate our body and our cellular makeup to combat autoimmune disease. So in Japan, I write like totally mind blowing. Yes. So now in Japan, what they do is most employers are mandated to provide their employees with outdoor experiences or time in green space. And what you'll also see is in Japan is the way that buildings are now being designed is there's a lot of courtyards and outdoor space and more natural light. And you may have heard that Japan has one of the best health rates of any country on the planet. So that was forest bathing. Now, forest therapy is a little bit different because we take a relational approach to the forest. So when I'm with a group outside in the forest or in a natural atmosphere, we're looking at the forest as a companion and a partner, as opposed to just a resource. So instead of just going out and sitting next to a tree and just thinking like, what can I get from this tree? I can get these phytoncides. We're thinking about that connection that we have as humans with nature. And one of those examples is when I'm breathing out CO2, carbon dioxide, and a plant needs carbon dioxide to live. That is what the plant breathes. And the plant breathes oxygen, breathes out oxygen, which is what we need to breathe in to survive. So we see that sort of a symbiotic relationship with the forest.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I was completely oversimplifying this in my mind. So basically, what I hear you saying is that we need to get our tukuses outside and we need to be doing it a whole lot more for better mental and physical health. Did I get that right?
Yes, and the beautiful thing is that you can do it inside too. So, for example, Joleen, I see that you have some houseplants behind you.
I
These
do. I have
beautiful
lots.
houseplants. So those houseplants are emitting phytoncides right now as we
Awesome.
record this. So, if it's a brutal winter and it's -20, and if you go outside, your eyeballs are going to freeze.
Right.
If you have just one houseplant, you could just take some time, sit next to that houseplant. You're breathing on that houseplant, and that houseplant is so happy about that, and is
Amazing.
also providing you with sustenance as well.
So you see Deborah's comment here. She's asking, do trees emit these chemicals even in the winter?
They do. All of the time, they're protecting themselves, even when it looks like they are hibernating.
Wow. So, okay, so Jenn, how then do you combine forest therapy, forest bathing with your art practice? And how did you and I land in Strawberry Moon at the same time?
That's such a good question. So during my training with the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy, the program to receive your certification to become a forest therapy guide is a 6-month training. And it's a fairly intense training program. And I do want to thank my trainers, Nadine Mazula, who's also in Massachusetts with me, as well as Manuela Siegfried, who's in Costa Rica. They are wonderful trainers of mine. And the program culminates in like a final project, which is called a harvest project. And what I realized was before I had even decided to take a sabbatical from my legal practice, so I'm a corporate transactional attorney by trade, I had been doing some zine work, with zines.
Yes.
And they were all pointing me to the outside. And I keep my zines in this little box.
Oh, cute.
Because they're so precious to me. So I decided to continue doing those zines.
Yeah.
While I was participating in this program for my certification, which sends us outside a lot. We spend a lot of time outside. And what I noticed was it was much easier for me to take a folded piece of paper, just a folded piece of paper outdoors with some markers and a pen than my whole journal.
Right.
So that's how the zines came to be. And so for my harvest project, I just did a video of all the zines that I had created during my training. And that was what I decided to submit to Strawberry Moon.
I love it. So, okay, so for those of you not familiar with zines, it's short for a little baby magazine, and you can make them with folding paper and cutting it and folding it in such a way that you get lots of pages And it doesn't require any signature sewing, like some of us who do bookbinding might be familiar with. So a zine could have how many pages, Jen? Like 8 or 16?
Yes, 8.
Yeah, 8 pages from one piece of paper. So they are definitely portable, and would fit any kind of like on your feet traveling kind of environment. Not a lot of tools or supplies are required to connect with that kind of medium when you're outside. So then, Jen, do you have like a favorite medium or project or technique inside the zine?
So I would consider myself an amateur artist.
Love that.
I really came into my artistic self. She's always been in there, but it
Of
was really
course.
only about 3 years ago. I was doing a program with Janessa Durrani, who's also connected with Strawberry Moon Magazine.
Yes,
And
yes.
she was doing a program on limited beliefs. And the question that she asked was, what was something that you learned or were told about yourself when you were a child
Yeah.
that has kind of kept you from something? And for me, it was basically being told I couldn't draw.
Oh, right.
And then the next step was, okay, well, challenge yourself, start drawing. And that's when I realized that while my drawing may not be, professional grade,
Right.
I really love to cut and paste
Yeah, me
paper and
too.
collage.
Me too.
So I
Love
would
it.
think my favorite medium is collaging and mixed media.
Me too, absolutely. And, Jen, it's funny you should say that because, for those of you who are with us here live, I'm sure they've heard me say this about 1 million times, but I actually didn't self-identify as an artist until I started posting on social media. Um, I actually didn't think I could claim that title because the things that I make and create are not really very refined. I cannot draw a cat. I can't really draw at all. Like, you don't want me as your Pictionary partner, other than I'm a really great guesser, but I am a terrible, terrible drawer. Like, can't do it at all. And it wasn't until I started, posting to social media that folks were saying, they were so supportive and kind of amazed. And I really appreciated all of that support and kind of like falling into what I've known my whole life, right? Like that question about, what was something you were told? And I feel like I might have been told that the identity of artist was not accessible to me because I don't have refined skills. I'm more of a cutter, paster, muscle it together until it fits kind of
Mhm.
maker. Sounds like you and I might have that bit
Oh,
in
it totally
common. Yeah.
resonates. Yeah, and as an attorney, I mean, I'm a corporate transactional attorney. I don't even go to
Right.
court. Like, I write contracts, I create businesses and sell them.
Right.
So it was also one of those, there was some cultural edges there too.
Sure,
I'm an
sure.
attorney. Attorneys aren't artists, that kind of
Right.
thing, which is just not true at all. I mean, and since I've gone back to practicing law, I practice law part-time
Yeah.
because I'm passionate about that as well as part of my life.
Yeah. It's like
And
you're a whole person.
yes, and I've
Mhm.
I've gotten to know so many more attorneys who are musicians and
Yes,
artists and have, we're all multifaceted people. So
definitely.
it's definitely
Definitely.
broadened me as an attorney as well.
I believe that. One of my good friends from high school, so she and her first husband, get this, one was a non-organic chemist and the other was an organic chemist. And we're
Perfect
talking
fit.
like, yeah, we're talking like working in labs and like high level, like making the world a better place kind of
Mhm.
stuff. And they both had such interesting artistic leanings. Like my friend, she did some like metal work with like utensils and forks and made these really cool things. And he worked on cars and built stuff. And I mean, it was just like what I loved about hanging out with those guys was they were so fully right brain, left brain, like
Mhm.
all of it that comes forth. And it was just like, just they're awesome, awesome people. But I do think that some of us, myself, talking about myself here, it took me a while to kind of get past, like, because my art forms are easy to me, I didn't think they were necessarily valuable because they're not hard,
Mhm.
right? And it took a while for my brain to understand that they're not hard for me, right? Because it's my talent or my passion or my interest. But I think this whole like artist, not an artist, maker, crafter, like that's kind of language that comes up in the crafting art space all the time. Kind of like with journaling. I've recently noticed that journalers are getting into some kind of like social media brouhaha over what makes a junk journal, what makes an art journal, what makes a visual journal. And I feel like in this topic, we get ourselves so tightly structured. Like there are so many rules. And I would like to say, I think that's nonsense.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Oh, isn't it?
I
Yeah.
didn't know
So,
there was a
yeah,
conversation.
totally crazy, totally crazy. But that's a complete and total tangent. So, what about this then, Jen? Do you have like a favorite project or a technique that you think our listeners might try? So, and two-part question, like, how can a person who may not have, either access to the outdoors or do it very often, like, how can some of us get started if this isn't a thing that we do?
Yeah, so forest therapy is super accessible. Again, if you have a house plant, and you could sit next to a house plant for just 10 minutes, set a timer for 10 minutes and just
Okay.
be with that house plant. Or you could go into your backyard, even if it's just a plot of a little bit of grass, even
Yeah.
if it's a plot of dirt or maybe moss, if there's
Right.
dirt with pebbles, you could sit on the ground and
Hmm.
feel the dirt with your hands and bring in the smells. You can focus on what you're hearing. So forest
Sure.
therapy is what we call a bodyfulness experience,
Okay, body
which is
fullness,
kind of
I love
juxtaposed to
that.
mindfulness. So you're
Yeah,
getting into your senses.
okay.
So you can just step outside for 5 minutes and
Mhm,
maybe close your eyes and hear what sounds are coming to you. And those include natural sounds, the sounds of nature, bird song, the breeze, and also
mhm.
human-made sounds. You might be in a city and you hear chatter or you
Right.
hear a plane. That's all okay. If it's really cold and you don't have a house plant, or if you just want a 2 to 3 minute forest therapy, nature therapy break on Living Canopy's Instagram page, I offer nature therapy breaks. They're just videos. They're 2 to 3 minutes long, not very long at all. And I just provide an invitation, and we call them invitations because there's no right or wrong way to do it.
Sure.
And I would invite all the listeners to give that a try if they need a place to start.
I love that, Jen, and we'll totally link that in our show notes for sure. So, okay, so then how about the second part of that question? The artsy part of it. So, what would you recommend we take with us to do a little artsy fartsy something while we're outside?
All you need is a piece of paper and a writing utensil.
Okay.
And you can go out, you can fold your piece of paper however you want. You can go online and look to see
Yes.
how to create a zine,
Yeah.
which I found very difficult the first 3 times I did it. And now
Agreed.
it's easy.
Yes.
Um,
Takes practice.
Yeah, I suggest for your listeners, if they find the videos that talk about
Mhm.
hamburgers and hot dogs, that was the best way for me to learn in terms of the folding of the paper, maybe because it had to do with food.
Right, right.
Um, but you can just take a piece of paper or you can bring your journal out and
Mhm.
just find a place to sit.
Okay.
Just have to sit for 10 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. So the science says that once you've sat in stillness in a spot outdoors for 20 minutes, that's when the rest of kind of what we call the more than human world
Okay.
just accepts that you are there. And so you may find a bird becoming very curious about you, or, some leaves rustling in the trees. You're becoming one with their space in about 20 minutes. So if you could do 20 minutes, great. If you only have 5 minutes, great.
Right, just
Um,
do something. Right.
and if
Okay.
if it comes over you to start sketching or scribbling or just
Mhm.
journaling, do it. And maybe that's going to come later when you go back inside and fix yourself a cup of tea or something that
Right.
you need, or after a nap. It may come to you later.
Interesting. I love that idea. I like to like my, have you ever heard that like buying craft supplies and being a crafter are like two different hobbies? Like,
I
like
have.
sometimes just like getting all the things and organizing the things is one hobby, and then actually sitting down to use them is another hobby. So I appreciate what you're saying about the simplicity, because I think I would instinctively overpack and bring and then maybe not want to get all of that out, because how do you set it out and how do you hold it and all of that? So I like the idea of simplifying this practice at least the first couple of times, until you kind of like, I would imagine for those of us who don't do it regularly, there's probably a bit of a, especially like in the 20-minute space, there's probably a bit of a understanding curve or a learning curve, I would say, especially for folks who are so driven by constant stimulation. Like 20 minutes waiting in line, do we get on our phones? Do we fill those spaces with other kinds of stimulus? I mean, surely you must see this. People who are like, what do I do for those 20 minutes? Am I scrolling through TikTok? Like, how do I do this?
That's such a great question. And part of the sessions, so I do forest therapy sessions.
Mm-hmm.
They're usually seasonal. I do seasonal sessions for groups that can sign up. I use an app called Forest Bathing Finder, and then I do
Okay.
private groups too when they want. And those sessions are 2 to 3 hours long, and they're all
Cool.
filled with invitations, which means the people who are participating in them
Mhm.
don't have to think about anything else. And I guide them through that space. And you do need that kind of time to move from your very demanding lives to
Right.
being outside, which could be an edge for a lot of people. And just
Mhm.
spending time with yourself can be a challenge for us.
Yes. Like,
Because
what do we do? Like, what is the
yeah,
activity? Yeah.
exactly. So I would say, ANFT has this amazing motto, which is the forest is the therapist and the guide opens the doors. So I'm a guide. I am not a therapist. The forest is a therapist, which means if you go outside in nature for 10 minutes, things are going to happen
Mhm.
that are going to whisk you away from the everyday demands of your life.
Mhm.
And it's almost that you have to experience it to believe it, to get
Okay.
out there and give it a try a couple of times, and you'll start to understand what that means, that the forest really is the therapist and is there for you, just like we are there for the forest.
So so Jen, did you always know this? Or like I mean, like being raised near, the mountains and, being a camper outside person, like did you always know this magic?
So I think my heart center always knew it,
Right.
that I've always had a connection to nature. And to be honest, for most of my life, I felt very weird about it because I thought I was the only one. Like, what
Right.
is this?
Right.
I feel so connected to these trees. Like, I feel that there's sentience in the natural world.
Right.
And then when I discovered ANFT, I realized I'm not alone. There are thousands of people who have come out and said, I feel this way too. And I said,
Okay.
I'm hopping on that train ASAP.
Right.
Because most of human existence, we've been outside.
Right.
We've always had this connection with the more than human world. It's only very, very recently, a tiny fraction of our existence on this planet, that we have kind of isolated ourselves
Right.
from the
Into
outdoors.
yes.
And that hasn't been stripped out of our DNA. That's the good news.
Right,
We
right.
still have that connection. You go out and I hear it all the time. Well, people just take a walk and they're like, I feel so much better.
Exactly. Well, we have, people in our family who have, struggled with depression or anxiety. And, it's like we have a little tick sheet of what to try or what to bump, right? And one of the things always is get outside for a few minutes, right? Do something outside, move around outside, and just completely change like your energy focus, basically. But it's always been at the top of the list of things to try to, bump a particular mood for someone. The other thing that's coming up for me is that, we here at Big Raven Farm, we are doing a retreat in the fall where we are doing ecoprint dyeing. And so we're going to be taking, plants that have kind of a high oil content like eucalyptus, and we will be pressing them in between fabric and paper and then cooking them over an open fire with vinegar and rusty bits of metal. And we did it last year and we just did it for one day. But the people who were there, they loved it so much that they were like, let's do this for 4 days so that we can play around with other plant material and see what other kind of results that we can get. And what I found about that activity and that experience at that retreat was that everybody was so elevated. Like their moods were elevated, their energy was elevated. Like they absolutely loved the process of, finding the plant material, pressing it in the book, winding it up really tight, putting it in the pot, and then just standing over this cauldron of cooking, books and plant matter for like an hour or so. And I loved how much they loved it, so much so that we'll be doing it again this year for 4 days. But it was that connection to being outside. And I think that artistically, I've certainly noticed that more and more people in my circles have such great interest in connecting art in their outdoor landscapes. Have you seen that as well? Like more people into this?
Yes. And I just want to say that sounds amazing.
Thank you.
And
I'm
also
very excited.
what I love about that is a lot of times when people think of doing art outdoors, it's sketching and painting something that they see.
Right.
And what I love about your activity is it's not about that at all. It's being outdoors and using bits and pieces from the natural world in addition to man-made.
Yes.
Like that metal, that chemical reaction that we've created from elements and putting it together to create art. And that's what I found too with the zines or any kind of art that I'm doing outside. A lot of times sometimes it's sketching what I see, but a lot of times it is not, again, because I do find drawing challenging.
Yeah.
It's other media, or I take, I'm just sitting and all of a sudden something falls from the tree. It's a piece of, pine needle, or it's some leaves. Or a bit of lichen. And I'm like, oh, it's a gift. This is a gift from the forest. And I just paste it right in my little piece of paper and I bring it home.
I love that.
So there's so many ways to incorporate art when you're outdoors.
Oh, I completely agree. And I just have been so overwhelmed, honestly, by people's interest in this kind of retreat. Because the other super cool part about it is, so when your book is in the cooker, so you have pressed your plant matter into the paper, you've wound it up in between a couple pieces of wood, it's in the pot with the metal and the vinegar, and it's going to cook. So we kind of break ourselves into teams, and we've got pot watchers, and then the other folks will go and make sun prints. So we do cyanotype prints in the middle. And if you haven't done cyanotype printing, game-changing great fun time. Like, it's one of my favorite things to do. I had a friend teach me how to do it, and since she taught me, I have like expanded my study and just gobbled up everything I can learn about the practice and the techniques. So for those of you not familiar, cyanotype printing is a chemical reaction. You put down an emulsion on paper, you let it dry, and then I use plant material. You can also use negatives, but that's a little bit different. But you take plant material and you put it on top of this emulsion on paper or fabric that's already dry. And then you leave it in the sun. And what you're basically doing is, where you've got your leaf down, you are blocking the sun and you are exposing the rest. So when you rinse the paper, you have this beautiful royal blue, almost purple. And where you've been blocking the sun, it's completely white. So they are these beautiful blue and white prints. And when you use petals and leaves and grasses, they just are so magical and so, so fun. I can't get enough of cyanotype printing. Jen, have you ever tried it?
When I was a kid, in that
Mm-hmm.
sense, yes. And I remember how fun it was.
It's so fun. It's so fun. And it's kind of one of those things where, like, if you watch the tutorials, like at first it feels a little overwhelming. But once you kind of break it down into its manageable parts, part one, emulsify the paper, let it dry overnight. Step two, find your plant matter, and you put it in between a couple pieces of glass, and you set a timer on your phone for 5 to 7 to 10 minutes, depending upon where the sun is in the sky, and then you rinse it. And then after you rinse it, you dip it in a water bath with just a scotch of hydrogen peroxide, and then you rinse it again, and that's it. I mean, that is absolutely it. And what I love is I've been able to teach so many people how to do this by just watching me do it once. And then you pretty much are like, oh, I've got it. And the real fun is in the playing, So, like, let's say I put down this leaf and I leave it for 7 minutes. But then at minute 2, I'm going to come and put down another one. And you can get all of these highs and lows in this art form. And then you can stick that in your zine, or you can put it in your visual journal. And it is just, I can't say enough good things about it. And especially if you've got a book cooking in the pot, this is like a really fun thing to do over on the side. So, and I could see how maybe gathering plant material, when you're out doing your forest therapy or forest bathing, and then bringing that back, and making another little something from it, I think that would be really fun.
Oh, yes. And this project does sound so playful
It
and
is.
amazing. And I would say, what a celebration of the
Mhm.
natural world. Because when we think of some of our famous painters who painted people, and the people that they painted, or photographers, the people who end up being on the paper, either painted or photographed, they're basically immortalized.
Yes,
We're going to see
definitely.
them in museums, we're going to see them in books. And
Yes.
when we take matter from the natural world, such as a leaf, we're doing that same thing to that
Mhm.
tree, to that mother tree who gave that leaf fell. We're immortalizing that leaf, that tree,
Mhm.
that plant in a way, because we're creating something from the plant and the tree,
Mhm.
which is just, it's beautiful. And again, this very relational aspect or approach to nature that I think a lot of people already are doing. They just don't realize that's what they are doing.
Right, and that's why you feel so good.
Yes.
You're reminding me, Jen, about, so I had this idea in the spring and it just got away from me, but I was thinking it would be so cool to create a coffee table book, and do cyanotype prints of not all, but a bunch of the green material that I find on my farm. And
Mhm.
call this coffee table book, Big Raven Farm, and have, leaves from the oak tree, the evergreens, the willow tree, like have all of that stuff in this coffee table book that represents Big Raven Farm, even the weeds, like all of these things. And I had this idea last spring and I gathered a whole bunch of stuff and I've been pressing it in a large like medical dictionary. So I'm going to have to get that one back out because I think that would be, I would love making it. And then I would love binding it, the whole process of creating something that sits on, right out on the coffee table here at Big Raven Farm. Like what you're saying about the immortalization of our property and our home.
And you're telling the story.
Right, exactly.
So you do such a nice job in your various materials of telling the story of Big Raven Farm. And this is just one more step because this is telling the trees story, the plant life story on your farm.
I'm so inspired. I'm so inspired. But
I'm so glad.
So tell me a little bit too about, let's circle back to, because, I kind of feel like cyanotype printing for me, I can do it in the winter. It's much harder because you really want to do it kind of like at high noon when the sun is the highest in the sky. It's so much easier to get your exposure times kind of figured out. I have a light. It's not as fun as like being outside. So tell us again, what are some of the things that you're doing in the winter? Especially for some of us who might be getting like the winter blues and when we're not as able to get outside as much, or so we think.
So first of all, I have to preface this by saying I love snow and I love the season of winter.
Nice.
I get so much joy, particularly we have snow. So I'm in Massachusetts and we have snow out there right now and it just brings me so much joy.
That's awesome.
And I would say, if it's above freezing.
Yeah.
And it's all about your layering, wearing more clothes than you think you need. And you can get out there, even if it's for, again, like 10 minutes.
Right.
So you want to make sure that you're being safe. Safety first, for sure.
Correct.
But a lot of times, again, if it's above freezing, you're going to be okay as long as you're wearing the appropriate gear.
Yes.
Cover as much of your body as you possibly can. And when you're out there, again, it's this plugging into your senses.
Okay.
So standing outside when it's cold, but it's sunny, for example, and you just stand and you close your eyes and you stand in the sun, you're getting this beautiful vitamin D. You might feel some breeze on your face. So you're also kind of plugging into that tactile, the touch feeling, because the breeze and the air is touching your face. You can breathe in through your nose or your mouth, and you can kind of feel through your nose. You can get the smells of what's around you, because the smells in winter and when it's cold is very different than the smells in the summer or in the spring when it's warm. You can open your mouth and breathe in, maybe breathing in like you're breathing through a straw, and see what that tastes like. What does that air taste like to you in your mouth? Are you tasting something you ate earlier in the day? How is that mixing with the air that you're kind of sucking in through the straw? And, keeping your eyes closed and, again, just hearing the sounds around you, both the natural sounds and also the human-made sounds. A lot of times we assume that in winter it's quiet. And I challenge everyone to see if that's actually the case when you're outside. Is nature actually quiet in the winter?
Right. I love that idea so much. In fact, so Big Raven, we're hot about ravens, raven this and raven that. And I have recently been watching videos on how ravens can attach to people and kind of become a friend. And, follow them around and like have these interesting relationships. And I'm like, I want a raven to find me so bad. I'm like, how do I manifest like a little raven friend in my life? Because I would love that so much. So I think to your point, step one is getting out there and connecting with everything happening with my senses. But then also what I love about what you're saying, Jen, is that, this idea of not having anything to do, like I notice it a lot in my children, and I hope they forgive me for kind of picking on them a little bit, but like my children, they're all young adults. They don't just wait in stillness.
Mm.
Like if they're waiting for dinner, or if they're waiting in line, or if they're waiting for something, they are on their phones. Like they don't have a moment that's not full of some kind of stimulation. And I'm sure I'm probably very similar. But I just am in love with this idea of not connecting digitally, or not being on a phone, or not being stimulated, but just being still and observant.
Yes.
I would imagine that's very powerful once we kind of recondition our brains that we don't need to be stimulated by a device 24/7.
Yes. And the beautiful thing is it doesn't have to be that long of a time. And then you can go back. You can
Right.
go back to what you're doing. You know, we're an IT driven world
Right.
in most of our occupations. And again, you know, this stemmed from Japan, and Japan's huge into tech.
Right.
And
Good
right.
point.
But they've been able to figure out this balance between being outdoors or having that experience and connection with plant life and other
Mhm.
animals besides humans,
Mhm.
and the weather, for
Right.
example, um, balancing that with their everyday lives, and which may
Exactly.
be sitting in front of a computer screen, ticket tapping away, or you know, finding yourself doom scrolling sometimes.
Right.
That's going to happen. This is not going to be life changing in the fact that it's going to completely put your life upside down.
Right.
This
Right.
is going to be life changing because it's always been there. You're just
Mhm.
opening yourself up to it and receiving it.
I love that. I'm so inspired to try, Jen. I really am. I really am. And I
Okay.
just love Deborah's comment. Deborah is awesome. She's a good friend. She says that if I want to attract a raven, I should go outside and dance with my black hair blows in the breeze. And
Well,
I'm
I
like,
can tell you, I can share an anecdote about
yes, please.
birds. So I can't tell you how many times. So when when I have my sessions,
Yes.
one of the bits that I share with the group when we begin is I invite them to be curious
Mm-hmm.
about what is around them in
Mm-hmm.
the forest, and also to be open to perhaps what is in the forest is also curious about them.
Okay.
And we do the first invitation always is an invitation. It's called Pleasures of Presence, and it just helps people get into
Mm-hmm.
their senses, this bodyfulness
Mm-hmm.
piece.
I love that word. Mm-hmm.
So we're sitting around in a group, and people have their eyes closed, and I'm just guiding them through this Pleasures of Presence invitation. And by the end, almost every single time I've done this, there'll be little birds that have surrounded us in the trees, because
So cool.
we become part of the forest, but we haven't always been there. So the birds are so curious. Who is this? And what are they
Right.
about? They come so close to us. It's really
Interesting.
something. So at the end of the invitation, the last bit is I invite everyone to open their eyes. And so many times we're seeing these little birds just sitting in the trees, kind of fluttering around like,
Right.
who are you? What are you doing here? What are you up to? I want to learn more about you.
So there's hope. There's hope for me
So
and
it
my
could be a
raven friends.
raven. Mhm.
I would love that so much. I feel so inspired. And Jen, I think too, one of the things that I'm kind of realizing about this conversation is that I think there is a part of our brain, all of us, right, friends who are on the call, we know this, right? We know this. We know that our connection to the outside world can help us have a better inside life. Like we know this. And I think we just forget, or we've got disconnected, or other things have gotten in the way. And what I appreciate about the conversation is the reminder that we're not talking about an hour a day.
Mhm.
We're talking about minutes or moments, or like just the intentional practice, which, for someone like me and many of you, right? Busy, busy, stupid busy. Um, but this sounds beneficial to so many parts of my life. it sounds like a no-brainer, like, why are we not doing this? And I appreciate everything that you've said today and how we can connect it to our artistic life. And I love your language of full-bodied, you said, right?
Mhm.
Full-bodied.
So
Love
it's a
it.
bodyfulness. So
Body
we there's a
fullness.
lot of mindfulness practice, which is
Yes,
very
yes.
important, very important. This is bodyfulness practice.
Love it.
So it's not so much about what we're thinking, it's
Yeah.
about what we're actually feeling in our bodies through our senses.
I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here today. And you might find this hard to believe, but we are actually almost out of time. The time
Wow.
has gone so fast. And I know that you are familiar with the show, and you know that we end all of them the same way.
Yes.
And so I can't miss the fan favorite, which is to ask you the same questions that I ask everyone. And you can give me one word answers, or you can go deeper. It's completely up to you. And I promise the questions aren't hard. The first one is, what is your favorite word?
Well, I can, since it's January,
Yeah.
I have a couple words for the year that I can
Yes.
share.
Please.
One that I'm particularly in love with. They both begin with the letter G.
Okay.
Um, so it's germinate.
Oh, okay. I love that.
So seeds right now are
Yeah.
hanging out. They're chilling under the
Yep.
ground. And when the time comes, they're going to germinate. And it's just beautiful because seeds can just be
Mhm.
chill for a very long time
Right,
until
right.
they get the message it's time to germinate. And the other word is gentle. And
Oh.
germination is a gentle process.
Mhm. Mhm.
I tend to, that's going to be a challenge for me because I'm more of a
Mhm.
rambunctious person as opposed to a gentle person. And I think that means I need more gentle in my life.
Oh, I love both of those words, and I get how they play into who you are, and they give us a little peek deeper into you. So my word for the year, it might sound like a crazy word to some, but my word for 2025 is arrival.
Mm.
And I've chosen arrival because I am a classic Gen Xer in that I am always chasing. I am always, always, always chasing the next big thing, the next big idea. I'm a serial entrepreneur. It's a blessing and a curse to be able to have, 1,000 uses for a paperclip. Like it's just, it takes up so much of my brain space. And so I've chosen arrival to remind me that I'm here. I don't
Yes,
have to keep chasing. I'm here. And to deepen my appreciation for where I am. So that's why I've chosen arrival.
that's fantastic.
Yeah, we'll see if it sticks. Okay. So then do you have a least favorite word? And for those of you on the call too, we want to know, what are your words of the year? But please, Jen, go ahead. Do you have a least
Oh,
favorite
I
word?
definitely do.
Okay, okay.
Should.
No one has said that before. I get it. Should. Hmm.
My kids are even afraid to say should. If should comes out of their mouth and they're like, oh,
Right.
because
They
they know
know.
how I
They know.
respond.
So can you give me a little bit of the why on should?
I I definitely have. I'm type A. I'm also Gen X.
Yes.
Type A Gen Xer
Mhm.
that has had a lot of drive in my life and has been driven by shoulds
Yes.
and thinking there was some big reward that was going to come after that. I should do this and then I'll get this. There's no big reward besides,
Yep.
being my true self. And there's no should
Mhm.
involved in that. And again, it's taken a lot of work to get there, to get to this
Mhm.
point in my life. And I'm so happy to be here. Can I just
Right.
say, no more
Right.
shoulds?
Your should reminds me a little bit of my arrival. Like they sound
Mm,
like they are cousins in a way. Because it's the drive and the chase that I think we sometimes, as we define our generation, I believe that those two things should lead. Like it should lead that we are driven and that we chase.
mm.
So anyway, um, thank you for sharing that, because my next question is very serious.
Oh,
And that is, what is the best kind of sandwich? It's so serious.
ooh, okay. So a sandwich that I love, I actually love breakfast. So it's going to be a
Mm,
breakfast sandwich. I make
nice.
this sandwich on a toasted bagel with fried egg,
Mm,
avocado,
yes.
mashed avocado, red pepper hummus, and everything but the bagel seasoning.
Yes.
So good.
I'm with you on all of that. All of that. This is one of my favorite questions because my favorite food is toast. I mean, I could eat toast
Nice.
all the time. And I even have, Prue from Bake Off. I have her book and it's just on toast. And like the very best toast recipe in there is like multigrain bread that you obviously toast. And then you smear on brie. And then you put on spicy, like hot and spicy sauce, kind of like you'd put on a wonton. And then you put on blackberries and arugula. It's so good. Like, it's so good. It's like
Wow.
the savory, the sweet, the
Yes.
salty, the spicy, like everything happens on that one piece of toast. I highly recommend it. And I recommend the book so much so I'm going to link it in the show notes. So
I was going to say, you
find it.
definitely need to link at least the recipe. My tummy is grumbled.
I know, right? It is such a great book. It's such a great book. So, okay. So now another serious question. And, since you're outside so much, maybe you've had an experience, but do you think there is a scary animal? And if so, like what's the scariest animal?
I believe this creature is in the animal kingdom. The tick.
That's so good. Yes. 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 Much devastation from that little critter.
Yes. And it's definitely an edge for a lot of people, including myself, when we're out outdoors, too, because they just wreak havoc.
They do. And they make people sick and animals sick. And I agree. That's an excellent answer. For me, it has been for a while and it will stay this way. It's skunk. And only because of what it would mean for me in cleanup if a skunk like tangled with my dog. It happened to my niece. My niece's dog, Meatball, got sprayed by a skunk. And poor thing, months after you'd hug her and, she'd pull out of the hug and she'd go, "Are you getting notes of skunk?" And we would be like, just a little.
Oh, yeah, that's a rough one. I have to say, like, if you asked me this question, maybe 4 years ago, I would have said possums. Like, I had this weird fear of possums until I found out that possums eat ticks.
Yes.
Like they actually go out and find ticks. So now I'm like, possums are fine with me. They're great. We need more possums.
We've had a possum in our chicken coop for a long time. And the chickens come out and they like kind of complain to the management, which is my husband. They're like, "Excuse me, manager, there is something in the chicken coop eating our feed." And so then Darren goes out to the chicken coop and like, encourages the possum to leave. And the possum just bites his boots and and acts like he belongs there. And it's just, he's been causing poor Darren quite a lot of stress lately. But they are just they're bless their hearts, they're ugly and stupid. They're so ugly, they're cute.
Yeah, and they serve a purpose.
And they do.
I don't know if we figured out what purpose ticks serve.
Yeah, the ticks probably, right? Eating the bugs. So is there a sound or noise that you love?
Oh, babbling brook.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to get poetic on this one. Yes. One that I can't see yet. When you're on a hiking trail and you can hear the water, but you can't see it yet, but you're getting closer and there's this anticipation that you're about to see something beautiful.
Oh, that's a great illustration. I can see it. I can see it just around the bend. Is there a sound or a noise that you do not like? Maybe even hate?
Yeah, I would say that canned metallic sound.
Yeah.
I really like I don't like machine, like the canned machine sound.
Yeah. I can get that too. For me, my daughter Georgie and we were just in New York this past weekend. We had a great mother-daughter weekend and we did Broadway, a whole bunch of them, and did all the things, and it was so awesome. And like, I know that it's necessary, but when sirens were going down the road we were walking, they were so loud, as they have to be, but they kind of rattle you on the inside, and it actually hurts your ears because they're just so loud to get over everything else. So I would say I appreciate that they need to make that noise, but being just feet away from it, wonderfully unpleasant. Wonderfully unpleasant. Uh, so now this one might be a little bit tricky because I know you have, like, you're an attorney but other than the profession that you're in, is there anything else you'd like to attempt?
Yes, I would like to run for office someday.
Seriously?
Yeah, it's a dream I've had since I was in the 7th grade. My purpose on this planet is to be an advocate, and I think that's why I'm an attorney and also a forest therapy guide. I do work in
Wow.
the gender justice and environmental justice spaces.
Yeah.
And so if I don't know if that will ever come true, but I'd love to attempt it.
That's awesome. Again, Jen, that's a first. We have not had anyone say that. I say welder. Like, I'd love to be a
Oh,
welder. Um,
cool.
but I'm really accident prone, so it's definitely off the table. But I would love that. I have a friend on TikTok. Her name is Tam I Am, and she like does memorial pieces. Like if somebody in your family passes away, you send her all of their tools, and then she'll build it into a sculpture. So I just love that whole concept and I love that idea. But you are our first to say political office. I love that. Let me know. I'll help.
Oh, great. Will
I would,
do.
I would love that. I would love to live
I think
vicariously.
it'd be great to have, an artist in politics, more artists or more out artists, I would say.
Right.
More
Definitely.
creatives.
Definitely. I love, oh gosh, you've got so many people right here that are just like, yes, do it,
That's
Jen, do
fantastic.
it. We're in it. We're so happy for you. Okay. And then is there a profession that, nope, not gonna do that. That's not for me.
Hmm. One would one would probably be firefighter.
Oh, mm-hmm.
That is
Mm-hmm.
a very difficult job.
Yeah,
God
and
love them
scary.
all.
Yes.
That I don't think I would be able to do.
Yep. There's heroism in that one for sure. I
Mhm.
I don't think I would be able to do that one either. I'm so tender-hearted that I think I would just freeze. Um, yeah, I don't want to do anything gross, you know. I don't want to touch nothing or smell anything or like I'm
Yet
kind of
you are a mom, so that means you have done gross things.
true,
You've
but
had to deal
not
with
on the
gross things, I should
daily
say.
9 to 5, right?
Yeah.
The ups and downs of that is one thing, but the continual like again, my daughter, she's amazing. She works in elder care and she has a hard job and
Yes.
she takes care of people at like their most vulnerable. I'm so proud of her because I have just in watching her, it takes a very special human to take care of our most fragile, vulnerable
Yes.
communities. And her job is hard and can be really gross. So I just admire people who can do that. It's a different constitution, you know?
Same. I totally
Yeah,
agree. Yes.
love it. Love it. All right, my last question for you. Jen, what brings you the most happiness?
This is going to come as no surprise to anyone listening. Being outdoors, just being in nature, particularly with my family. I love camping.
Mhm.
Like in the intro, we have a pop-up camper. We go on long camping road trips with my husband and my 2 sons, and it just brings me the most absolute joy a human could ever feel.
I love that. I was thinking about, when I have been doing outside things with my family, and one of my most favorite Mother's Days ever, we went on a long bike ride. We packed a picnic. We brought the football. We brought our hammocks, and it was so great. It was my most favorite Mother's Day ever. And I remind my kids all the time that like that didn't have to be a Mother's Day. Like that could be any day,
Yeah.
like I loved that day so much. And in this conversation about talking about nature and being outside, it's resonating with me as to why it was so great and
Yeah.
why I loved it so much.
Yeah, that does sound beautiful. So
It
wonderful
was.
experience.
It was so great. Well, Jen, thank you really from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much for being here. This was such a fun conversation. And for everyone listening, I will make sure to link all the things that we've talked about in the show notes, ways that you can find Jen, ways that you can perhaps take her up on the winter guided Tell us again the name, Jenn. The winter thing that you're doing on Instagram.
Yes. Well, it's always on Instagram, on Living
Always on
Canopy's
Instagram. Okay.
Instagram page. It's just nature breaks, and
Nature
they're
breaks.
all the seasons. So you could choose. They're in all sorts of different locations. So you can go through and choose. Do you want one in the snow? Do you want one at the ocean? Do you want one just in the trees? You can decide.
I love that. I will make sure to link it so everyone can find it. And then also just a little show reminder, Angie Bryant is my next guest. She'll be here with me on January 22nd. Angie is an incredible artist. She does alcohol ink and has such amazing techniques in her color choices, in what she designs. She makes the most beautiful flowers. She also happens to have designed a couple of yoga mats that we have at Big Raven Yoga. She's used our substrate as a place to plop her art. Just beautiful, wonderful, robust colors. And I cannot wait to talk to Angie more about her techniques and process and how she got so darn good. So please make sure you join us on the 22nd. And everyone who's been here live and listening and joining us in the comments, thank you so much. I do appreciate you. And Kathy said that she just got some alcoholing, so that's happening at a great time. And of course, Jenn Hoenig, thank you so much for being here. And I do hope we stay in touch because this was so much fun.
Same. Visiting Big Raven Farm is officially on my bucket list.
We love that. We love that so much. Okay, everyone, great days ahead, and we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.